Welcome to Sharper Square, presented by Hard Rock Bet. We are part of the Volume Podcast Network. This is the betting show that makes the square sharper, makes the wise guys pay attention all season and off-season long. I am Chad Millman. I am joined by my co-host, my BFF, my companion, my compadre, professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Chad, I feel like we had, 2-3 week lull there, and now we're right back in the thick of it. Feels like with the NFL, brother.
Dude, there is no rest for the wicked in the NFL season. You got a nice little new spot there. You're loaded with like a whole new situation.
Yep, I got a new studio, and I got all my collectibles behind me on my One Piece, my Pokemon, and finally set up. And hopefully, I'll have this spot until the season. So we'll see, but definitely look much better than I did last week on the handheld.
Yeah, people always forget about your deep investment in the essentially anime space with all those cards, and how committed you are to the risk and leveraging across all fronts, not just football, Simon, not just football.
Yeah, and I would say I'm someone that's always looking for another option than cash. Chad knows this. I'm a crazy person. If I can get gold rather than cash, my whole life I've done it. And being very skeptical of our government has paid out very well for your boy. And Pokemon as well. You could have bought the worst box ever printed. It's only doubled in value. So it's one of those things where in my whole life I've been investing in buying it. And like I said, the worst stuff, if you held on to it for 10 years, it goes up 100%. So it's something like, I just like having assets, and it's fun to show it off in the background.
Well, listen, if you're talking about fiat currencies like the, US dollar, I just spent the past weekend at the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and
really?
I did. And I actually
AI?
a lot of it was AI, but almost all of it was prediction markets. And obviously, crypto is a huge part of the conversation. That's why I brought up the fiat currencies is a huge part of the conversation for prediction markets. And by the way, we have a guest coming on, a massive guest, to talk NFL free agency. But I do think this is interesting for people because I ultimately moderated a panel with Shane Copeland, who's the CEO of Polymarket, as well as Nate Silver, obviously famous, now doing the Substack Silver Bulletin, created 538, and another guy named Rick Best, who runs the prediction market desk for Susquehanna, the massive trading firm, and that are getting deep into prediction markets, and they're opening their own prediction market, a JV with Robinhood. Obviously, I'm writing quite a bit about prediction markets for my book that's coming out early next year. And it was fascinating because, 2 days before I was interviewing Shane on this panel, two different senators had proposed a bill called the End Prediction Market Corruption Act, because as America started a war with Iran, there were all these trades about when that would actually start happening. And about 1,000 people made trades on Polymarket that this would happen within 24 hours. And it was about $855,000 worth of bets. And people were, many people, I think close to 20 people, won or earned more than $100,000 on these bets. Several others, I think another 100 people earned more than $19,000 on the bets. Early in the year, there was the bet where someone had won $400,000 on when Maduro was going to be captured. So there's been a lot of conversation about the idea of insiders profiting from inside information on political and geopolitical markets on these prediction exchanges. So I asked Shane about this, and he answered the question, which I thought was great. He answered a lot of questions that were challenging about how to manage this. I just thought it was fascinating, and we're talking a lot about these things. Look, these things and these guys who are creating them, whether it's Kalshi, Polymarket, they are libertarian in the parlance of prediction exchanges, Hayekian, meaning like they fully believe in the freedom to trade whatever they want to trade without government interference. And their visions and bombast is running up against public backlash and regulatory frameworks that are being proposed that are challenging these real ideas. Fascinating time to be in this space, and obviously they're getting bigger and bigger into sports, which we'll get into. But if anyone wants to watch it, go check out 42analytics.com. That's the Sloan Sports website, and it's on there. It's got all the streams for the days, and this was the first one on Saturday, so it's the very first one that's live on Saturday. Great conversation that was had. So
just to put a bow on it, my favorite line, chat, from the whole thing you just said was the senator. I am not joking, people. This man actually says this, was no one should profit off war. And that works for the U.S. government.
Well, look, it's funny.
And he was being dead serious when he said he doesn't understand the irony at all. So
here's the problem. And then we're going to get to our guest, who's actually a mainstay at Sloan and is one of the guys who people idolize, who are moving up in the space because of what he's been able to do with analytics in football. What I will say about this, and I'm working on the book right now, and I wrote this line in relation to the proposal that was put forth in advance of when I was doing this panel. I'm like, it just reeked of political grandstanding proposing the bill. But prediction exchanges brought it upon themselves because of the backlash, and they're allowing politicians to stand their ground on this kind of notion that they can get away with this. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. But that's a good transition to bringing in our guest. NFL free agency officially has kicked off. The player movement has been fast and furious across the NFL. Our guest posted the definitive column of how to judge winners and losers in this market today, which is why we're lucky to be having him on. A very special guest returning to the show, longtime writer for ESPN, veteran sports media personality, an originator in every sense, a guy who has taken analytics, used it for football intelligence for a mass audience. He's universally beloved. The article I'm talking about, NFL free agency winners and losers, is on ESPN.com, the front page, top of the page right now. Host of the Bill Barnwell Show. Welcome back, Bill Barnwell, BB from Queens. How you doing, brother?
Chad, how are you? Simon, I have not delved in the Pokemon universe, but I did grab a couple of giant Lego sets and hold them for a few years, and that was a surprising source of value. So the only problem was I had to lug them around the East Coast in 3 different moves, these enormous 1,000-piece Lego sets. That wasn't fun. But turns out they are a profitable place of value as well.
Story of my life. You just summed up my life right there. When I was moving, I go, why did I buy all this stupid shit? It is the worst moving, especially if you're a collector. But yeah, like you said, Pokemon, it's got a crazy, crazy market. These fans, it's worldwide.
Fellas, I don't want anyone to forget, since we have a very popular guest on it. Anyone can get the show at Sharper Square on YouTube. They can subscribe. They can like the video. They can subscribe to Sharper Square, Apple Pods, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Bill, let's not dilly-dally. I want to talk about Tua signing with the Falcons because he gets outsized attention because of the contract, because going back to the draft and who should take him and where he should be taken and the up and down success and the concussions and everything else, he's getting paid $54 million by the Dolphins no matter what. Now he's signing with the Falcons. Give us your take on this, because I thought what you were saying in the column was spot on. How are you feeling about this?
I have to say, from Tua's perspective, I mean, it feels pretty good as far as potential landing spots. When I looked at Tua's market, obviously he wasn't going to cost anything because, like you said, the Dolphins are paying him $54 million. He gets that whether he makes $20 million with another team, whether he makes $1 million with another team. So no one's going to pay him more than the league minimum because it would just offset what the Dolphins pay. So he's getting $54 million. Really, his team is paying him $1.5 million or so. But there were a lot of teams who either have a quarterback or I think would say, I don't know if he's really for us, or it might not be a great fit for Tua. I mean, a team like the Browns, for example, yes, they have an opening at quarterback to compete with the various guys they have in the building, but that's a cold weather city. Tua has not played well in cold weather. It is an offense that has 5 new starting offensive linemen coming in 2026 potentially. Tua obviously needs a healthy offensive line to play his best football and a good offensive line to play his best football. I don't think you want to put too much on his shoulders. I think you want to have a really heavy play action game. And look at the teams who could have signed Tua, who don't play outdoors, who have a decent offensive line, who have a decent run game, and who have an opening at quarterback. Falcons and Cardinals felt like the 2 best fits to be. And the Falcons, I think, make a lot of sense. They have Michael Penix coming off of a torn ACL, don't know what his status is going to be in 2026. The people who inexplicably signed Kirk Cousins and then drafted Michael Penix in the top 10 are gone. So there's not the organizational sort of like commitment to Michael Penix. Maybe there would have been if those people were still in the building. Kevin Stefanski, has not exactly had the, how can I say this nicely, the greatest crop of quarterbacks to work with over the course of his career, but I think he's typically done a good job with the guys he had. Deshaun Watson, maybe a notable exception, although I don't know if anybody can fix how bad Deshaun Watson has been since joining the Cleveland Browns, but you have an offense that I think is going to be heavy play action based, a lot of booting to the left. Kevin Stefanski loves booting to the left. That's a Falcons team that stylistically was already playing to the left last year because Michael Penix was the quarterback for most of the season. So I think Tua fits in, and it is to me, the best opportunity to win a job. I think even if he had gone elsewhere, I floated him even going to the Chiefs as like the sort of like September Patrick Mahomes replacement. That would have been fine, but obviously no chance of him being the starter there in the long term. He has a shot at winning a starting job in Atlanta for an entire season, if not into the future after the Dolphins stop paying his contract.
What's interesting, Simon, we rip on the NFC South all the time. Just a quartet of nondescript regional fan bases that have no real national prominence, don't really make an impact. They're always, they perennial are the team that the division with teams that are 8-9, 9-8, 10-7. They'll win the division. They'll get a good seed, but only because of a lack of competition in their division. So between the Falcons and Stefanski, who I think we can agree is a good coach, and kind of got jobbed with a lack of talent at quarterback by the Browns. The Panthers signed Jalen Phillips. Bill, I know you love that signing. Simon, before we came on the air, you were skeptical. The Saints signed Travis Etienne. They've made some moves. We'll see how we feel about Shuck going into year 2. Let's assess from each of your points of view how each team has moved in this division, because it all of a sudden it could be a fascinating division. Simon, you're up first.
And I'll say from the top, Chad is the one that has all those feelings for NFC South. I love the NFC South. It's my moneymaker. And my favorite Dallas clown on Dallas Cowboys. The NFC South has gone to every team has gone to the Super Bowl. The Cowboys have not in the last 30 years. And that's all you need to know about the Cowboys organization.
And for the record, don't forget, Chad's choice last week in our season win totals part 1 was Carolina over 6.5. And you said what did you said? You said it was a trap.
Yeah, it's Joe Public trap. It's a
Joe Public trap.
Big trap line. But yeah, I'll just start for the quarterback move for Tua. I agree with Bill. Like, to me, that was a great move because they're going to have 2 lost seasons here, right? If maybe they hit on Tua, and that'll be great, but you draft a quarterback in the top 10, that's a miss. That's looking like a miss. And you pay Kirk all that money, that's going to set your organization back 3-4 years. There's still a window, though. There's still a window because they have so much talent. So if Tua can't come in there, playing the offense, be fixed, great. If Penix can come back early and he is more comfortable now in this offense and it's year 3 for him, great. So to me, I love the move organizationally from Atlanta for the Carolina Panthers getting Phillips. I love the move, Chad, because it's not my money. So to me, they overpaid for a player, but they filled a void. They had a weakness. They went out and overpaid for a guy that has not proven to be worth that type of money in any way, but you see the upside. As someone that is an Eagles fan that watched him this year, he was always a step late on getting the sack. So his stats might not look amazing to the outside, but he did put a ton of pressure on QBs, and he played very well for coming to a new system midway through the year. So to me, Carolina, that's a move they needed to make. They have an owner with a ton of money who's had some big misses. I like the move for them. So I agree with Bill that it's a good move for Carolina. I just don't know. I don't know if I'd want my team to be paying that type of money for a guy like him, though.
Bill?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good player, but to Simon's point, like, he's never been a $30 million a year player. He might have that potential. Simon's right in that he has great pressure numbers, just not great sack numbers. And the pressures matter. You know, creating pressure is what you want your pass rushers to do. But we're talking about a guy who retired in college because he had concussion concerns, who suffered a concussion last year with the Eagles. Thankfully, did not miss time because of it. Who has a torn ACL, a torn Achilles in his first 5 NFL seasons. If you could promise me we were getting 17 games of Jalen Phillips, I would be thrilled. I'd say, okay, great. I'm in for $30 million a year. But that's a really big risk. And it's something for the Panthers where I think it makes evaluating them tougher because, like, yes, there's a scenario where the guys they have who are really good stay healthy, and that could be a really fun team. But I just have my concerns that even though they have some really significant investments up front on the defensive line, obviously have invested a ton on their offensive line, I just don't know that I really have a lot of faith in those guys being consistent. And like, yes, they made the postseason. I think they're sort of like they get a little bonus bump in people's heads, but you have to remember, the Falcons finished with the exact same record as the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers won the division, and so they see it as like, oh, we're taking a step in the right direction. We have the right people around. We're gonna spend more money. The Falcons fired everyone with the same exact record. So I just sort of feel like maybe the difference between those two teams is being overstated by the fact that one made it to the postseason and another turned over pretty much their entire organization.
Well, look, the season win total for the Falcons is 7.5. The season win total for the Saints is 7.5. The season win total for the Panthers is 6.5. What do we think, Simon, the market is telling us right now when the Saints have vaulted over the Panthers in their season win totals? What are we supposed to take from that?
Very easy. It's basically you win your division, you play a first place schedule. So that's exactly what the Panthers are looking at. And it's a team that, I mean, Bill just nailed it. They overachieved. They went above expectations last year. Not me and you, Chad. We believed in them last year. But we'd be the first to admit, Bryce Young, some of the games he put together, you were never going to see coming. I mean, the games against the Rams as well, those were some of his best games of his career. It was impressive how well he played against a really good Rams defense. So, you know, when I look at that team, like you just said, that in that division, it's so fluky. I'm more inclined to take the under, especially the books. The books are tying on themselves here. They are getting 99% of the over money to the Carolina Panthers, right? It's people very early are taking that over because of what you just said. It just feels naturally they should improve on last year, especially the fact they've added free agency. But I'm the other way where it's like, I know they overachieved. I know they stole 2 games last year. Mathematically, if Atlanta's a little better, if the Saints are a little better, if the Bucks don't lose 8 straight games and they're a little better, that's going to be really tough for them to get the 7 wins, Chad. It's just a tough division, especially when you need Bryce Young to take another step.
And I would say the other thing for the Saints perspective here is timing matters, right? I mean, this Saints team was 2-10 heading into December, and then they win 4 straight games right at the end of the year. Easy for people, I think, to say, hey, they've got momentum moving forward. They have a quarterback who we believe in, and Tyler Shook. And man, I'll tell you what, I thought Tyler Shook looked good last year. I thought Spencer Rattler looked good last year, which tells me I think Kellen Moore's a pretty darn good NFL head coach and offensive play designer because he had 2 quarterbacks I did not have high hopes for playing well last year. But go to that 4-game winning streak. I know a lot of people were not sitting around in the middle of December and saying, you know what I'm going to watch today? I'm watching Saints Bucks. I'm watching Saints Panthers. I'm watching Saints Jets. And I can tell you a lot of people were not watching Saints Titans in week 17, nor should they have been. There's better things to do with your life than watching those games. I watch them because I am a sicko, but we're talking about 4 defenses that range from meh to really bad. Jets defense was actively revolting against Aaron Glenn late in the season. Tennessee's defense was bad all year in secondary. Tampa Bay did not have a good defense against the pass all year. Carolina's defense was okay, a couple good cornerbacks, but they, to the point of citing Jalen Phillips, did not have a great pass rush from the edge a year ago. And so there are reasons to be optimistic about what the Saints have, but they are going to be losing a bunch of talent this year. They finally have a little bit of money to spend. Their cap situation's better than it's been before, which is great, but they have not had great drafts in recent years. They lost Alante Taylor, who was their best cornerback, to free agency. So I do think there's reasons to be optimistic, but at the same time, this was a 5-win team that played one of the easiest schedules in football. I think people are doing a lot of projecting about Tyler Shuck and that late game stretch being more meaningful than perhaps the earlier stretch where they were, like I said, 2-10 and not playing very good football.
So at the end of the day, it might be the same as it always is. Bucks, Falcons, Panthers, Saints. That we've given the NFC South so much time, and at the end of the day, it's going to be the same as it ever was. Bill, I can tell you right now, we watched every second of every Saints game because of the 200-1 Tyler Shook bet that Simon gave out right when he was about to go into his run that ended up with him barely losing out on Offensive Rookie of the Year. You just said something, though, that's interesting to me about you're kind of a sicko. And you had a great line in the column today about Jalen Phillips and his next-gen stats chip rate. And that what the Panthers are really paying for, and by the way, we're spending so much time on this because the two biggest winners in Bill's column were Tua and Jalen Phillips. So you talked about his next-gen stats rate, the chip rate for next-gen stats, and that's really what they're paying for. What I'm always curious about in your columns, are you going through 8 million stats across multiple deep analytics platforms? Like, how are you figuring out which to go to so quickly? Because you're also turning these things around so quickly. It's an inside baseball story question, but I got to know.
It's my job. That's what I have to be good at.
Listen, I know it's your job. It's also why I tried to hire you 8 million times at Action Network. You're very, very good at it. But I need to know, like, how are you getting it done so quickly? How do you figure out where you're going to go? Like, what the best thing is to look at so fast?
Well, I mean, I'm watching the games. And so I have, like, it's not like I'm sitting here saying, oh, is Jalen Phillips good at anything? Like, what is he good at stuff? Like, I know from watching the games each week, watching all 22 each week, Jalen Phillips created a ton of pressures. Like, I have that in my head already. And so I know, okay, who has the pressure numbers I trust the most? That's next gen stats, just because they are tracking not just all pressures, but specifically the pressures I really think are valuable are quick pressures. Those are usually 2.5 seconds. Are you beating a guy quickly and getting right at the quarterback? That's a really valuable stat to me. So I know, okay, I know Jalen Phillips' sack numbers aren't great because he didn't have double-digit sacks this year or anywhere close, but if my instinct from watching all those games says he has a lot of pressures, let me go to the pressure source I trust most. Let me see where he ranks. Oh, he ranks pretty well. Great. We are good. I don't need to look for anything else. If it doesn't come out the way I figure, I go back and say, okay, well, maybe is the stat not accurately capturing what I saw? Did I not see enough of a sample? You know, I have not watched every single play, but I've watched every third down. I've watched every pressure. I've watched every, pass attempt over the course of the season. So I've seen a lot of stuff. So sometimes the numbers don't agree with me and I say, okay, well, maybe my opinion is wrong, or maybe my evidence is wrong, or maybe there's something in the data that I need to account for more accurately. I'll give you a good example. The Packers traded for Rashawn Gary yesterday. And I was like, well, okay player, like the price tag a little higher than I would have hoped for, but like solid numbers against the pass rush. I've seen him make some plays this year. When I look back at his pressure numbers, they weren't very good. Like it's sort of like it made me lean down a bit versus where my expectations were when I looked at that trade to begin with. So, I think I'm trying to use numbers to have evidence, and I'm not using the numbers to like distort what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to just blow people's minds with crazy numbers. I think you have to put everything in context, but like the reality is I'm not a former player. I am not a former coach. If I'm going to say something, I have to have evidence for what I say. And so some of that evidence is anecdotal. It's big picture watching games. And some of it is using data that I trust to reinforce that, okay, this thing I saw actually is real and accurate.
How often do you get calls from scouts, GMs, personnel people to either yell at you because they disagree or tell you like, yeah, you're totally nailing it?
I got one during our taping. So about
Just
once
now.
just about once every half hour or so during the first few days of free agency, people have a little bit of free time and they read stuff and want to yell at me. Or this one actually was more complimentary.
I was going to say, give me the context. Did this person tell me what this person said? You don't have to tell me who it was.
I'm not going to reveal I'll tell you off the air what the person said. But I'll just say it was very rarely, once in a while, I get something wrong. And so I will get people saying, hey, like you didn't consider this, or maybe you didn't realize this was the case. And that's meaningful and valuable. But usually it's more like, if it's something they don't like, it's usually a thoughtful, hey, this is what we were thinking. This is why it made sense to us. Sometimes with some teams, there's just straight up anger, like how could you even consider this? But usually it's complimentary. Usually it's like, yeah, glad you saw that. Yeah, that makes sense. Or someone saying, oh, we didn't know why this team did this, and it actually made sense when you put it in context for me. So it really is more. It's not as like dramatic. Once every year, I get like a really angry executive calling me, and that's usually a fun hour. Where I sit there and just sort of like talk them down from whatever they want to vent at me. But usually it's pretty positive. I will say people generally, like people who seek me out, who have my number, who are trying to get in touch with me, usually are more like-minded than you might think.
Well, I got to know, are these teams reaching out to you? My two favorite moves so far this year have been done by the Rams. I love what the Rams have done in this free agency. I would love, are you getting texts from people asking you or commenting about, what are the Chiefs doing? This is not the Chiefs we're used to. Going out and paying our running back that is not worthy of that money, in my opinion. I know they have the same numbers I do, and it is the most desperate, bizarre move by a Chiefs organization that seems so smart, calculating all their moves. Are teams around the league texting you, being like, laughing about it? Are they all saying, oh, this is a good move? What are teams saying about the Chiefs? Because in my circles, a lot of guys are raising eyebrows. It's like something's different about this Chiefs organization they've been in the past.
Yeah, it's a good question. I do find that certain teams get the benefit of the doubt. You know, like when the Patriots were rolling with Belichick, I remember even publicly you'd hear about, you know, when the Patriots would suggest a rule change, people wouldn't want to vote for it because they were like, oh, Belichick knows something we don't. He's going to break something that we don't realize. I'm not voting for that. I'm not giving Belichick anything, even if it was like a totally innocuous rule change. The Chiefs don't have that sort of like hold over people, but there is an element of like people talk themselves into it when it comes to a lot of what the Chiefs do. Like I'll give you an example. Trading Tyreek Hill a couple of years ago, there were definitely people who would have, you know, I think if it had been a different team, said, hey, what are they thinking? These are the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, his top receiver, is gone. He's in the prime of his career. We're in win now mode. You're trading him for draft picks. Like, you don't even know who's going to be catching the ball for you next year. And that worked out okay. I mean, there wasn't like Tyreek Hill was bad in Miami. He was a superstar for 2 years, but all things being equal, Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls after that trade. I think it worked. You know, they're not perfect. They don't hit 100. I understand why they made this move for Kenneth Walker. To me, it's about explosive plays. They were just not generating anything explosive in their run game. And Kenneth Walker is someone who has his limitations, not a great receiver, not a great pass blocker, but does create a lot of explosive plays, chunk plays in the run game. Was going to see a lot of light boxes based on what Kansas City sees on defense. Could they have gotten that for less money by signing Kenny Gainwell or signing Rico Dowdle? I do think so. But I guess the thing that I would base it on, my concern was that they were going to draft Jeremiah Love at 9. And Jeremiah Love is going to be a good player, but the opportunity cost of taking a running back at 9 when you have other positions that are much harder to fill, that you're going to finally get a chance to address in the top 10 of the draft, whether that be edge rusher, whether that be tackle, whether that be wide receiver, whether it be cornerback, which they have a huge need for now with the Rams, like you mentioned, getting Kansas City's 2 best corners away via trade and via free agency. You have to take that shot on those guys then. You just cannot afford to take a running back in the first round. We saw them do it with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and everyone loved it. I loved it. Scouts loved it. It was a great move. And then Jonathan Taylor was off the board in the second round, and T. Higgins was the next player taken, and that would have been a much more valuable player for them over the ensuing 5 years, even though it didn't look like they needed a wide receiver at the time. And so all of this goes to say people are generally respectful. There's a certain level of reverence for Andy Reid that I feel like would lead to, if this were a different team, I think there'd be more criticism. But I think in the NFL, the Chiefs generally get the benefit of the doubt.
Let's do a quick break from our friends at Hard Rock. On the other side, I want to get Bill's take on desperate signings and teams that have improved themselves the most and the biggest losers. We'll be right back. Today's show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet, Florida's sportsbook. March is here, and that means college hoops take center stage. The stakes are rising, the shots are falling, and now is the time to hit the hardwood with Hard Rock Bet. Sign up today and double your winnings on your first 10 bets, max $50. That's right, your winnings are doubled on your first 10 bets. So if you would have won $100 on your bet, make that 200. That's how you start March hot. And the welcome offer is just the tip off. All tournament long, Hard Rock Bet is rolling out daily dance and boosts featuring a live profit boost and a parlay profit boost every single day. More ways to shoot your shot, more ways to cash in with boosted odds. So don't sit on the bench. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today. So let's get the party started. All right, Bill, did the person who texted you, were they like, this was a great take on a complimentary move, or was this a great take on a bad move by a team?
It was neither of those. It was a arguing that a thing I did not like was actually good.
Interesting. Okay. Why can't you tell us that? That's you're not giving anything away. You're not telling us where it's coming from.
I would prefer not to name the team involved.
Oh, I don't want you to tell me who sent it to you. Oh, you don't want to name the team that you wrote about that's involved.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
All right. I can respect that, but I hope you can respect my follow-up as a capital J journalist to try to get to the bottom of this truth.
I understand.
Give me your most improved teams. Because look, a lot of these season win totals haven't moved off of free agency in the first 24 hours. So Simon just mentioned the Rams. Who are your most improved teams right now, including the Chicago Bears?
I would throw the Rams out there. I love what they did. I mean, it was attacking their biggest need outside of kicker. Kicker is their biggest need. But by the way, would you guys not be impressed if the Rams offered Butker, Brendan Aubrey, excuse me. Very similar names in terms of like, if they offered Brendan Aubrey $10 million a year and dared the Cowboys to match, they'd give up a second round pick.
I would love it. But by the way, you talk about benefit of the doubt. Of the doubt. Les Snead would get the benefit of the doubt that is a brilliant move, right?
Question.
If the Browns did it, they'd be like, God, the fucking Browns.
Idiots. No question. But their two biggest weaknesses were in the kicking game on special teams and at cornerback. When they lost games last year, they lost to the Eagles. They lost to the Carolina Panthers, who we mentioned earlier. They lost to the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. They could not stop bigger receivers. They have a great defensive line, young, cheap, super talented. They have good safeties. They brought back Cam Curl, which I like. They were just getting by all year at cornerback. It was one of those cases where people like me looked at the roster in September and said, if they fail, it's going to be because of this. And not always right. But this was a case where it was, because that was what cost them in the biggest games. And so I love what they did. They addressed cornerback. They trade the late first round pick. We know Les Snead hates late first round picks. He loves other picks. I know that there's the famous, how can I say this in a Disney friendly way? To heck with those picks attitude towards from Les Snead. But that's towards the bottom part of the first round.
We're not Disney.
I am.
But you're on a Colin Cowherd platform. He's a wild card.
I am very reserved.
Yes, of course.
But you're talking about a Rams team that needed to get cornerback better immediately, because unlike other teams where you hear about the Ravens being in win now mode when they trade for Maxx Crosby, the Rams actually are in win now mode. There is no solution at cornerback beyond Matthew Stafford, who knows if Sean McVay is going to be there when Stafford retires. He's been rumored to go to the media for, I'm sure he has like a $30 million a year job lined up the moment he decides to retire, and he's going to be very good at that. But they need to fix cornerback. And so getting Trent McDuffie, who's going to be the perfect fit for what they need, playing inside and outside, blitzing, playing near the line of scrimmage, is a great fit. And then Jalen Watson, given one touchdown over the last 2 years at cornerback, in a very Chiefs scheme that plays a lot of man, forces you to cover against exotic blitzes, that forces you to play in a lot of sub packages. That's what the Rams want to do. They played dime 4 times the league average rate last year. They played dime more than anybody else in football, and they would have played it more if they had defensive backs and cornerbacks specifically they felt good about. Now they can live in that world. They can play 5-6 defensive backs all the time, the way the Seahawks did on their way to the Super Bowl. They can play coverage behind those great front four. They can run all the exotic blitzes and sim pressures they want. That feels like just the perfect fit for what the Rams needed. And then I'll give you another one. I will not go far from Los Angeles. I will go to Las Vegas, where the Las Vegas Raiders did spend a lot of money. And like the economist in me, I'm not a trained economist, but the economist in me knows paying Tyler Linderbaum 50% more per year than any center in NFL history is too much money. But that's not my problem. I'm not paying the money. They don't have a significant opportunity cost because they have a ton of money to spend. They're going to have a quarterback, the first overall pick, presumably, in Fernando Mendoza, who needs help. Their offensive line on the interior was a mess last year. And you're bringing in a guy who is going to help you in all facets of the game. He's going to help your quarterback in protection. He's good, a pretty good, I think an underrated one-on-one pass blocker at center. Next Gen Stats on him is like one of the best one-on-one blockers at center in all of football last year. And he's a great piece in the run game. Clint Kubiak plays, as we saw with Seattle, a very zone-heavy, moving the interior linemen, a lot of screens. You need mobile interior linemen for that offense, that scheme to work, and Linderbaum is a great fit there. On defense, they brought back Eric Stokes, who I think was really good last year behind a very bad pass rush. Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, much improved set of linebackers, some guys who can blitz, who can play in coverage. There's still work to be done. I didn't love signing Jalen Naylor for more than $11 million a year. They still need another wide receiver. I thought they might make a run at Mike Evans, who ended up going, of course, to the Niners. They still need pieces up front. They just lost Maxx Crosby, who's pretty darn good. But there's a much more realistic sense to what can we do to get better quickly, logically. And they have those 2 first-round picks, which is going to go a long way.
Simon, the Rams right now are plus 775 to win the Super Bowl. They have the shortest odds other than the Seahawks. The Raiders are 150 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Well, I'm not saying the Raiders are going to win the Super Bowl, but I do love what the Raiders have done, not just and also they get Colton Miller back, who was an excellent offensive lineman. And when he went down, that really changed the trajectory of their team. I think they're putting together a team that will support Fernando Mendoza, but also Clint Kubiak. Like, how often do we see these teams hire a coach and then not give them any pieces that are helpful to what they like to do? The Jets never give their coaches help, right? You got to admire a little bit of what the Raiders are doing here.
Love it. Organizationally, it just shows that, they missed last year, right? Pete, Geno, huge swing, huge miss. They'll always have that weak one against the Patriots. That was their Super Bowl. But to me, I love all these moves. I already knew you were probably going to be on their over 5.5 at Hard Rock, but I look at all these lines and I just think to myself, okay, we have a quarterback we love that's a winner. We have an offensive mind that seems like he's pretty smart, like caters to his guys' strengths, avoids the weaknesses, and then you see what they've done in the offseason, attacking that offensive line, attacking the defense, which was, to me, a lost cause. It's like this defense is going to take 3 years to fix, not an offseason. So that's still going to be a major weakness. But Fernando Mendoza, a winner with that team, I can talk myself into them getting a couple wins here in this division that everyone's so on the Chargers, so on the Chiefs, so on, what could possibly be another great year from Denver. No one's going to be thinking about this Vegas team. So I do think I like what Bill's take is. Like they're a sneaky team where, yes, they've overpaid for guys, but like Bill said, it's the guys you want to overpay with. A center with a young quarterback, that's my dream scenario. Pay that man that money. I don't know if Bill agrees with that, but I just, the Jason Kelce, what he did for Hurts, and you've heard all these other quarterbacks talk about how important the center is that can call what they're going to do on the offensive line. It's just massive. So I love that take from Bill.
Yeah, I will say that when you see teams make a significant leap, the two things that almost always change are upgrade a quarterback, upgrade a head coach. The Raiders could make that case. The only problem is I was sitting here a year ago and saying, yeah, I think the Raiders are going to be better because they upgraded a quarterback and upgraded the head coach. And it turned out they did not upgrade a quarterback or upgraded a head coach.
Who are, and by the way, Bill, your breakdown in the column today about the salaries for centers and the decision matrix that the Ravens went through for Linderbaum when his option came up and how the market has just exploded was great. But I'm surprised they didn't. I'm surprised they didn't do it last year when it's become so clear how important the center is. Like, as a Bears fan, I'm freaking out that Drew Dalman retired, right? And like, I know that's not on anyone's radar, and it was a one-day blip of a story. But I can tell you right now, the text chain that is going on between me and my kid about Drew Dalman is intense, because the centers, because of Jason Kelce, have been elevated in importance.
Yeah, I mean, it is a legitimately important position, and it's just making your young quarterback's life easier. I just think about Mahomes, who has had good centers his entire career. Most recently, Creed Humphrey, who's the highest paid center in football. Like you said,
not anymore.
To Kelce, not anymore, but he was for a couple of years. It's just like, and you think about some guys who have struggled, who have not had great centers. CJ Stroud has not ever really developed beyond what he was as a rookie, even though I think he's an awesome player, because they have had different centers and not very good centers each season for him in Houston. It really is I think it's something that has been underrated when it comes to evaluating players. I think it's not true for every team. Like, I think it's nice for Tom Brady to have a good center, but like, Tom Brady was able to set his own protections, reset them, get the ball out quick, read defenses. Like, not that young quarterbacks can't do that. It's just tougher. And so I do believe this is a position that was probably underpaid for a while. And we'll see. Other teams might say, hey, this is a contract that we're not going to match. But I think a lot of guys are going to get paid based off of what Linderbaum just got from the Raiders.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. I mean, you don't overpay for a center if you have Matthew Stafford, right? You overpay him if you got a young quarterback. That to me is nail on the head. And, you know, I don't want to be the negative guy, but we do need to get the teams that didn't make any moves who was least improved. And, you know, me and Chad joked about it. Going back 5 years, I wanted what my Eagles team just did. They didn't make a single move. That's the dream. That means you've drafted really well. You're paying in-house. That's where you want to be in life. But we saw last year, New England, biggest spender out of every team in the offseason, they made it to a Super Bowl. So now people are a little torn, because it's like, okay, the cap has moved so much nowadays. You do want to spend the offseason, but there's a balance, right? If you're not paying your own homegrown guys, you are missing out. So am I overthinking? Are the Eagles missing out right now? Because they've made zero moves, and they do need pieces, right? They need a tight end. They need to do something, but Howie's being very patient.
I would give them an incomplete. I mean, when I used to do grades for ESPN, when it came to free agency, and the first day grades, I'm not going to lie, always a little more negative than people thought, because those moves typically do not work out. I mean, there's just a really low hit rate for moves on the first day, the first sort of 36 hours of free agency. So it's incomplete, because if we're sitting here a month from now and they have not done anything, that to me is a problem. They have pieces they need to add. They could add another outside cornerback. They're going to have Jihad Campbell take over for Nakobe Dean, but that defensive line was not as deep last year as it was in years past. Now they've lost Jalen Phillips. They've lost Brandon Graham to retirement. They're going to have to rebuild a little bit of their depth along the defensive line. Maybe they'll sign Trey Hendrickson. We'll be sitting here saying, well, Eagles made a big splash and just waited a day to do it. But I do think they're in a good spot. I mean, like you said, Jordan Davis, they signed to an extension. They're going to have Jalen Carter coming due for an extension. We don't know what's going to happen with A.J. Brown. Obviously, that could stretch all the way until the summer. I still think he's going to stay in the big picture. So that, to me, is an incomplete grade. I would say a team that I think has negatively harm themselves is the Baltimore Ravens, where I know they traded for Maxx Crosby. Maxx Crosby is an awesome football player, but they trade 2 first-round picks to get Maxx Crosby as he approaches his age 29th season. He's still going to be a good player, but you're not like the Rams trading for guys as they're entering their peak or for a quarterback. We just haven't seen teams give up that much for guys at this point of their careers in a very long time. That is just not a trade we have seen. The Ravens needed edge rusher help. They struck out on some of their guys. They traded Tagovailoa, who signed elsewhere in free agency after he got traded to the Chargers. But that team now is missing 2 first-round picks. They lost a bunch of valuable pieces yesterday. They lost Isaiah Likely, Draymond Jones, who was starting on the edge for them, Aloha Gilman, who really helped them after he came over at safety. And you just don't have as many pieces to resolve those missing holes in the roster. And I think I look at that team and I think, okay, they draft really well usually, but now you're missing your 2 top picks. You can't trade down out of the first round. You're not getting those Kyle Hamilton caliber pieces in the first round who are going to be your incredible surplus value options. They're going to have to hit on all of those second, third, fourth, fifth round picks, or a lot of them. You can do that. But when you have a quarterback making as much as Lamar Jackson's going to make on his new deal, as much as Maxx Crosby's making, as Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith, Ronnie Stanley's making, they have a really expensive top 4, top 5, top 6 on that roster, and a lot of guys who unfortunately have significant injury histories over the last few years. And so it feels very tenuous to me. It feels like they're going to be very top heavy, and that's just not a good place to be. You really have to get everything right to win with that formula, and I don't know if that's going to happen for the Baltimore Ravens.
You, Simon, before, you mentioned CJ Stroud, and you also noted in the column, in terms of teams that did not do themselves any favors, the Houston Texans are one of them. Explain yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched the postseason game where CJ Stroud got the heck beat out of him by the Patriots in the snow. The Texans saw that and were like, yeah, we're good. So
yeah.
It back pretty much with those dudes. I felt like we were in the good spot. I mean, they traded away Titus Howard, who had bounced around, played some right tackle, played left guard, was expensive. I think he wants to play right tackle, and I don't think Houston wants to play him at right tackle. But you're down 1 lineman. You trade Juice Scruggs, who has not worked out as a second-round pick. Okay, you're down another offensive lineman. You bring back Ed Ingram, who was a okay run blocker last year, not a good pass blocker. One thing to bring him back and pay him a couple $1 million the way they did last year in the final year of his deal, they give him $13 million a year or so on a contract. They signed Trent Brown, who was a good player when he's healthy, but he's missed significant time pretty much every single year since he won the Super Bowl with the Patriots. And he's getting up to $7 million. The money's not a big concern, but more just they're putting him in and saying, okay, you're going to be our right tackle. We're going to count on you. I know they have the draft still to come, but they trade a 4th-round pick for David Montgomery, who's going from one of the best situations for a running back in football to one of the worst situations in football. It just feels like they're shopping in the wrong order. They're getting the running back first when you should be getting the running back last and fixing the line first. And so it just feels like last year, they decided to fix the offensive line by shaking everything up, trading away Laramie Tunsil, moving everybody around, drafting a bunch of guys, acquiring a bunch of guys. Nothing wrong with that. I could see the logic in doing most of that. Now it feels like that didn't work. So our new solution is just to keep everything pretty much back in place and just kind of get a year of continuity. It just feels like they're like min-maxing these strategies. It doesn't feel like there's any real like long-term vision to how to build the infrastructure around CJ Stroud. And now CJ Stroud is going to get expensive. CJ Stroud is eligible for a new deal, and I would bet his agent's going to be asking, even though he played poorly last year, for a contract that starts with a 6 for $60 million plus a season. Will Anderson, who is awesome, one of the best players in football, is going to get a new deal. He's going to be the highest paid edge rusher, highest paid defender in football when he signs his new contract. That's going to be $45 million a year or more. So now, if you can't win or can't build a great team when CJ Stroud and Will Anderson are making $15 million a year, how are you going to do that when they're making $105 million a year, which is where they're going to be as early as 2026?
Along these lines, not that we like to be negative, because I'm irrationally optimistic, but what signing to you has been the most desperate signing?
I'll go Tennessee, where I like Tennessee this year. I think Cam Ward was sort of like, year one Drake May-ish in a lot of ways, where you watch the tape and you're like, man, this dude is getting no help, but there's so much fun stuff. He's hitting throws, he's making plays. I think he's really good. But they needed to add help for Cam Ward this offseason. And Brian Daboll was like, guys, I know exactly the place to go. The New York Giants offense. We're going to run it back. We're going to go to Tennessee. A lot of people move from New York to the South as they get older. They want to be in warmer weather. I understand. Nothing wrong with that. But Wan'Dale Robinson is like kind of a gadget player. Chimere Dike was a gadget player for Tennessee last year. It's kind of marginalizing one of your more exciting young players from last year's roster, which they did not have very many of, unfortunately. They signed Daniel Bellinger. Okay, you need a blocking tight end. He's okay. Giants are one of the worst run games in football when he was there. They pay him $8 million a year. I mean, you really needed to get a day one blocking tight end just because he knew Brian Daboll's scheme. You couldn't have waited for one of the 84 other blocking tight ends who are going to make $1 million or $2 million a couple weeks from now to get that deal done. It just felt it felt like they knew we needed to add something, but they added pieces that good teams develop, where they find a gadget guy on day 3 of the draft, the way that DK might have been. They find blocking tight ends in the draft or in free agency for a couple $1 million. Tennessee paid a premium to add those guys, and I don't think they've really solved anything. They still need a receiving tight end. They still need a running back who they trust in pass protection. They still need a number one wide receiver, and maybe they get Jeremiah Love. Maybe that solves one of their problems. I hope it does. But it feels like they didn't really solve anything and spent $25 million a year in the process.
I'll go with.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Simon.
I'll go with Pittsburgh. I don't really get. I don't know who they are anymore, Chad. It's like you've been in love for 10 years with a woman, and then you wake up one day, you just don't know who she is anymore. And that's how I feel about Pittsburgh. They are not who they used to be. They used to pay guys in-house. Now they're going out and signing a second receiver. The whole thing is so bizarre. Maybe they know they're getting Rodgers back, but I didn't understand that signing. Like they're paying a linebacker they didn't really need. I had a lot of questions about Pittsburgh and the Colts. I'm totally lost with them, and they put themselves in a corner now where Daniel Jones is asking for real money, even though he's not a real quarterback yet. He had 8 good games, and he's looking for $50 million a year. Where if I am them, if they had a real owner, they would step in and they would say, "We're gonna give Kyler $1.5 million and roll the dice." I would much rather that than committing 3 years, $50 million per year to Daniel Jones. I could not believe Daniel Jones's agency is asking for that type of money. And, I feel bad for the Colts. They're totally stuck. And I'll give you one sleeper team I actually loved that no one's giving any love out there. I need to give a little love to them because Chad knows I basically went scorched earth on this organization, Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. I basically said they should fold up and they shouldn't finish out last year after that embarrassing loss to Tennessee. The owner listened to me and all the fans. He is burning it all down. That's what they need to do. They need to burn it all down. I know people are like, well, they signed Minshew, I think, and they're going to roll Brissett at the quarterback again. Yes, that is exactly what you want in that division. You are 5 years behind every team in your division. You are in the hardest division in football. You need to do what Arizona did. So I am so happy Arizona is going this route because, if Manning is that guy, Manning has a great year and he's going to be the number 1 pick, Arizona has set themselves right up for that. Them and the Jets are trying to set themselves up for that Manning, whoever's going to be the number 1 pick. And I think Arizona right now is the lead start because I think the Jets are just I'm skeptical of Jets as an organization. I don't know what they're really doing. Arizona, I know exactly what they're doing right now. They are all in on getting that number 1 pick and restarting this. So, I'll give a little bit of love to Arizona. Not taking the over 4.5. That's definitely an underlook. But, yeah, that to me is a team that no one's talking about them because they didn't do much, but I love the full-on tank by them.
Yeah, I like what the Cardinals did. I think they're in a good spot, like you said, for many of the reasons that you suggested. The Steelers, it just feels like they have a very diluted idea of where they stand and what they need to be. The way I described them a couple weeks ago was incurious about making it past the opening round of the playoffs. No, everyone else is trying to win a Super Bowl, or I guess the Cardinals are trying to get Arch Manning. The Steelers are trying to make it to the postseason and don't care about anything else once they get there. And so when you look at their moves from that lens, it makes sense. You trade for Michael Pittman, who's basically a salary dump for the Colts when they signed Alec Pierce. Well, Michael Pittman's averaged like 10 yards a reception over the last few years. That is perfect for the Steelers. That is exactly what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. Get the ball out quick, throw screens, throw slants, don't get hit, move on, have a nice day. They signed Jamel Dean, good player. Not a question about adding a good player, but they have signed veteran cornerback after veteran cornerback, Patrick Peterson, Jalen Ramsey, in years past. And those moves typically have not been great for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've had to move those guys to safety by the end.
Like, Bill, do you think Joey
year.
Porter Jr. is a number one corner in this league?
He's really good, but I just, to your point, like, I think about, I actually wrote about this when Tomlin left. I went back and looked at all of those great Steelers teams who made it to the Super Bowl under Tomlin, under Cowher. 21, 22 of their most used players were guys who were drafted by the Steelers or undrafted free agents who the Steelers brought in and developed. They were not trading for DK Metcalf. They were not trading for Michael Pittman. They were not importing half of their roster from outside the building. And that feels like they just have lost what makes the Steelers. They have really talented young players. Joey Porter is good. Keanu Benton is good. Mason McCormick is good. Troy Fontana is good. Zach Frazier is good. If they just leaned into that, I think they would be fine. But leaning into that means you're going to have a 2 or 3 year window where you stink. And the Steelers would rather go 9-8 year after year after year and have no hope of winning a Super Bowl than take that step backwards in the hopes of actually taking a bigger step forward if they can find a young quarterback and build around him.
Bill Barnwell, you get the last word on Sharp or Square. This month, as a reminder, we'll still have new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. This Thursday, one of my favorite episodes of the year, we're talking Academy Awards with our good friend, Hollywood insider Michael Lasker, who knows everything about the Oscars. Then next week, we got March Madness, part 2 of our NFL win totals episode, which is rapidly changing given the free agency dynamics. This has been Sharp or Square, part of the Volume Podcast Network. I want to thank Bill Barnwell. Go listen to the Bill Barnwell Show from our friends at ESPN. Watch or listen on YouTube at Sharp or Square. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, download from Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe, leave us 5 stars. Say whatever you want. Feedback is a gift. Until next time, love you.